Hey students, when a circle shows its true shape in orthographic views, then the same circle appears an ellipse in isometric view, and in isometric view that circle is called as isocircle. So how to construct an isocircle manually, that is what I am going to tell you in this video. So be ready with your drawing instruments and sketchbook. Let's proceed. It's very easy to draw isocircle using a computer software like AutoCAD. But there is proper procedure you will have to follow to construct isocircle manually. The method is known as 4-center method. We are going to study that 4-center method to draw isocircle in isometric views. So let's proceed. Now here is a circle of diameter 50 in front view. But a circle is possible in top view also. So in the second diagram, this is circle I've shown which is in the top view. And there is a circle in side view. Remember, these three diagrams are not related to each other. Right now we are just going to have practice of drawing isocircles if circle is in front view, if circle is in top view, or if circle is in side view. Now you must be knowing that in front view, out of three axes, length axis, height axis and width axis, out of these three axes, only two axes appear. So in front view, you get length horizontally and height vertically. In top view, you get length horizontally but width vertically. And in side view, you get width horizontally and height vertically. So orthographic views are two-dimensional views. In an isometric view, all three dimensions, all three axes appear, but you must be sure about their orientation before you start drawing isocircle. So let's assume orientation of width, height and length axis in isometric view in this manner. So with reference to these axes, let's construct isometric views of these circles. Now if circle is in front view, in orthographic views, center of a circle is always established using center lines horizontal and vertical. Of course, those center lines are always parallel to one of the three reference axes. If it is front view, then horizontal center line is parallel to length axis and vertical center line is parallel to height axis. That is, center of the circle you should establish in isometric view also by drawing these two center lines, one parallel to length axis and the other one parallel to height axis. Now let's draw these center lines. You must not forget that orientation of length and height axis you will have to check in isometric view. In isometric view, we are going to draw for this circle in front view. Length axis should be inclined in this way at an angle 30 degrees, that is on the right side upwards. In this manner, you are going to draw length axis. And height axis in isometric view also, it remains vertical. Height axis in side view it is vertical, in front view it is vertical, and in isometric view also vertical. So it's better to have vertical axis as reference axis. So set roller with vertical edge of the paper and draw height axis. Now let's assume that here is the center. So we should draw length axis through this point. In isometric view, length axis appear at an angle 60 degrees with height axis. And that is why set protractor in this manner and measure 60 degrees with reference to this vertical axis and draw length axis. So how to draw this center line, that's very important. Now if circle is in top view, you will have to select reference lines parallel to length and parallel to width. So parallel to length and parallel to width. So check here. Draw first of all a faint vertical line. We don't need height axis here to draw circle in the top view. But still draw a faint vertical line. Let's assume that here is center of this circle in isometric view. Now through this point there must be length axis and width axis. Check here. Length axis in isometric view at an angle 30 degrees with horizontal reference line, and width axis also is at an angle 30 degrees, but it is left side upwards. In this orientation you are going to draw, and length axis right side upwards, in that orientation you are going to draw. So set protractor in this manner and measure 60 degrees for length axis, and check here width axis you should measure 120 degrees. So from this vertical reference point from 0 to 120 degrees you should measure, and this is how you can draw width axis, that is this axis. So this vertical axis in the top view is actually axis parallel to width, so you should draw axis in this manner, parallel to width, and length axis, this is how you should draw. So this is length axis. Most important to draw isocircle is in your isometric view to locate these center lines. Now how to locate these two center lines, try to understand. So draw height axis and width axis. Width axis at an angle 60 degrees in this time. So this is how you measure 60 degrees with vertical from at center and you draw width axis. So this is how you should construct the corresponding axis. So for circle in side view, if you want to draw corresponding isocircle, then height axis and width axis, must be there. And remaining procedure is the same. Most important is to locate center lines. And what is the remaining procedure? Try to understand. Check what is the radius. It's 25 here. And from the center at distance 25, you mark the points in this manner. So use compass, take distance, radius in compass, and from center of the isocircle, mark 4 points at distance 25 on each side along the center line. Try to understand once again. So this is how, take radius 25 and mark points at distance 25 on these center lines from the center of isocircle. Once again listen here. Take radius 25 and mark points at distance 25 on these center lines from the center of isocircle. Now through these points you are going to draw lines parallel to center lines in this way. Check here. Use a roller, set it with length axis and draw the lines parallel to length axis. Similarly, draw the lines parallel to height axis. So you will get rhombus of sides equal to diameter of the circle. So simply draw lines parallel to these center lines from these newly marked points. And to draw these parallel lines through these points, use roller. So this is how you have constructed a rhombus. Check here the orientation. This circle appears in the front view, this circle appears in the top view, and this circle appears in the side view. This is the basic procedure. And remember, when you draw isometric views of machine part and if there are circular edges, you will have to use this procedure. Now after constructing the rhombus, draw longer diagonal and shorter diagonal. Just join diagonally opposite corners, you will get a diagonal longer and a diagonal shorter. Now join one end of shorter diagonal with midpoint of opposite edges. Try to understand now clearly here. Check here. I have joined this one end of shorter diagonal with midpoint of the opposite edge. Similarly, midpoint of the opposite edge. So such two lines you will be able to draw. Check here this procedure once again. Draw longer diagonal and shorter diagonal. And from any one of the two ends of shorter diagonal, draw lines. Join an end of shorter diagonal with midpoint of opposite edges. So this way. Once again listen. Draw longer diagonal, shorter diagonal and join one end of shorter diagonal, check here, with midpoint of opposite edge. Now this procedure of drawing isocircle is known as 4 centers method. So there are 4 centers involved. Using those 4 centers, using each of those centers, we draw 4 circular arcs which are tangent to each other. So which are those 4 centers? Try to understand. 4 centers now I am showing you. Two of those four centers are ends of shorter diagonal. Check here. Ends of shorter diagonal. And the other two centers you get on longer diagonal. Points of intersection on the longer diagonal. This height axis and length axis. Height and length axis create four quadrants. Four quadrants. In isometric views, these quadrants get distorted. Out of these four quadrants, the two quadrants are wider. So you get one center in each quadrant. How to get those four centers? One in each quadrant. Try to understand once again here. Two of the four centers, these four centers, two of the four centers are ends of shorter diagonal. Check. And the other two centers you get as points of intersection on longer diagonal. Check here. This point and this point. Ends of shorter diagonal and other two centers are on longer diagonal points of intersection. We are going to use these four centers to draw four arcs. Now listen, in the wider quadrants, watch here, this quadrant. In wider quadrants, we draw bigger arcs. And in the remaining two quadrants, we draw smaller arcs. And this is how we draw four arcs to get the circle. So to draw two bigger arcs, you have center in the opposite quadrant. Check here. So we drew this arc, and where is the center of this arc? In the diagonally opposite quadrant. Check again. So in diagonally opposite quadrant you have centers, and to draw two smaller arcs you have centers in the same quadrant. Remember this. Longer arcs have centers in the diagonally opposite quadrant, and shorter arcs have centers in the same quadrant. And we draw these arcs from midpoint to midpoint of the side of rhombus. This is midpoint of the side of rhombus, and this is midpoint of the side of rhombus. So midpoint to, that means one arc in one quadrant. Now you will understand better. For a longer arc, two longer arcs, two shorter arcs, this is how we complete isocircle. Now for the longer arcs, centers are in diagonally opposite quadrants. So check here. And for the shorter arcs, center is in the same quadrant. So if you want to draw arc here, then center is in the same quadrant here. Check. So this is how we have drawn this circle, which is in the top view of orthographic view. Here it is in the top plane of isometric view. Similarly, now here try to understand. Longer arcs with centers in diagonally opposite quadrants, and shorter arcs with centers in the same quadrant. And you are going to draw these arcs from midpoint to midpoint of the sides of this rhombus. Draw these circles once so that you know how to draw isocircles manually. Then you start drawing isometric views of machine parts. So I'm sure you must have understood how to construct an isocircle. So from my next video, I'll explain you how we can construct an isometric view if orthographic views of a machine part are given.